Did. Joining us now, National Campaign Manager for Donald Trump for President, Corey Lewandowski, formerly the National Recruiting Director and also a Regional Manager for Americans for Prosperity, live from New York, Trump Towers. Hey, Corey, good to have you with us.
Hey, it's great to be back with you. How are you?
Well, since we talked, I had Trump on my show in April, and I predicted he would run for president, and I predicted if he did, within 30 days he'd be at the top of the polls and he was going to win Iowa and New Hampshire. The next day, everybody made fun of me. Once again, I'm right. You're at the top of almost every national poll. What's happening?
Well, I think it's truly an important time in our country, and a straight talk message of putting our country first again, getting rid of this political correctness, which so many people want to say is important but doesn't help our country move forward, is a message which is resonating with the people across the country. If you look at the recent polling, which you just alluded to, John, Mr. Trump is in second place in Iowa. He's in second place in New Hampshire. And if you look at the compilation of the polls, which the Huffington Post did last week, he is now the front runner for the Republican GOP nomination, edging out establishment candidate Jeb Bush by 0.3 of a point. And now, while I understand it's early on, if you look at these polls, it's very, very important because they ask some additional questions. Who is the strongest on leadership? Donald Trump. Who is the strongest to fix the economy? Donald Trump. Who is the best negotiator? Donald Trump. So it's not just the overall numbers, but when you dive into those numbers, who do you want leading you if you identify yourself as conservative or very conservative? Donald Trump is a clear frontrunner across the board in all of these, so it's a very good indication for him.
Now, the other thing is very interesting going on, as you know, Corey, is the pundits and what I call the Republican professional class, the so-called professional losers. They're going absolutely berserk. Their hair's on fire. Why?
Well, so, this is the thing. You look at all these political pundits who have made a living on losing races across their lives and getting rich by bilking candidates out of hundreds of millions of dollars in their career. Mm-hmm. And what they said was, first, Donald Trump isn't going to run for president. So then he says he's going to run. Oh, he'll never file the paperwork with the FEC. Oh, he's filed the paperwork with the FEC. Oh, he's not a serious candidate. He's leading all of the national polls right now. Every time they put another metric in place, he beats or exceeds that. And the reason they hate it is because they know they can't control him. He will not be beholden to a political class. He will not be beholden to these pundits who he thinks, are just out to talk about how great they used to be or all the things that they've done. They don't get paid for their success in most occasions. They get paid for their, I can help you do this or I can help you do that with no measure of success.
Right.
And that's not how a business works. And so these individuals who want to go on TV and say, he's not a real candidate, or he can't win, or this is all about his name recognition, continuously dismiss the fact that Jeb Bush's unfavorable ratings are extremely high. 24% of the people say that they'll never vote for Jeb Bush, and Jeb Bush's name ID is 100%. But those guys don't want to go and talk about those issues. They want to say that, the people who are supporting Donald Trump, well, they're just a flash in the pan.
Well, I don't think it is. And look, I think you're going to win Iowa. And I think I've been saying this for some time. You're going to win New Hampshire. And then I think you're going to turn around and win South Carolina. You win the first three primaries, then somebody's going to have to take your candidate out. I don't see it happening. I think it's going to be the nominee. And I've been saying that for some time now. I'm probably the only person on the air saying that, but I never get this stuff backwards. Now, this is the thing. I think this is more than a candidacy, Corey. I think it's a movement. And I told a story on the air the other day, and so I'm going to repeat it quickly. My wife, Ann, I've been with her forever. She's a moderate Republican. McCain, George Bush 1, George Bush 2, etc. Okay? And she doesn't really get riled up about this stuff. So the other day, I'm sitting there, and she got CNN on, and we're just sitting there because I had the week off, and somebody with CNN was on, and they were criticizing Trump about Macy's and talking about Macy's dropping his tie wear. Well, she jumped up and went absolutely crazy, screaming at the TV, went to her bag, got out her Macy's charge card, tore it up, threw it away and said, I'll never shop at Macy's again, ever. And I sat there shocked because this is out of character for my wife. I think there's a sense that somebody has to do something. And I think as a result of that, your candidate is at the forefront of a movement.
Well, I think you're right. And, let me say that I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of people who were involved in the Reagan campaign in the 80s, in 80 and 84. And I'm not trying to make a direct correlation, but they called me and said, Corey, I don't think you understand what Mr. Trump has tapped into. I don't think you fully appreciate how much of a movement this really is. They said their best correlation is the Reagan campaign, where people followed him because he had a message which people wanted to hear. And if you remember, his message was, let's make America great. Mr. Trump's message is very similar. It says, make America great again. And when you think about that, our country isn't as great as it used to be. And your story is directly on point to, as opposed to these focus groups and all these polls. Just talk to the average rank-and-file person who you see at the grocery store or picking up the kids from school. Hey, what do you think? You know what? I think it's time we win for a change. I think it's time we have something to support. I think it's time to take care of our country, to make sure we're the greatest nation in the world again, to make sure that China isn't ripping us off and Japan isn't ripping us off, and that, you know what? Illegal immigrants, just like many of my family members and yours, they came to this country legally through a process. And that's what we need to foster, because what we've seen in California this weekend with an illegal immigrant coming in and killing a beautiful young woman who was just an innocent bystander. This is an individual in Mr. Sanchez who was deported on 5 different occasions, had 7 felony convictions, goes to Mexico, comes right back into the U.S., and commits a heinous act with almost, no regard for anyone's human life, and it's shameful. And until we get a hold and control the illegal immigrants coming across our border, our country can't be safe.
I mean, that's exactly it. And the criticism that Donald Trump got over his comments about Mexican illegals, he wasn't talking about the Mexican people or people coming here legally. He was talking about people that came to the United States and their first pass with our country was breaking the law. And when he said, I don't think they're sending us our best people. I mean, this is just reality. It's uncomfortable. You want to put your head in the sand. But a lot of people know what he's saying is right there. And I was saying earlier that I remember the Goldwater campaign in '64. It didn't turn out too well. But Barry's slogan, if you will, was in your heart, he's right. I think some of that is true with the Trump movement because what he says is, look, they're not sending us their best people. 62% of them that come here illegally haven't graduated from high school. I mean, that's not the top of your class. So, Corey, let's talk about the debates. Right now, if the cut was made, you guys make it. I don't think there's any way you're not going to be in these debates. What do you look for? They're only about a month away.
Yeah, so the debates are just under a month away. The first debate's going to be up in Cleveland, and there's a lot of speculation and conjecture about who's going to be in the debate, who's not going to be in the debate. Fox News has set the criteria that the top 10 candidates, based on the last 5 public polls that are available, that are recognized, will be in that debate. Under that criteria right now, Mr. Trump is number 7, just ahead of Senator Ted Cruz from Texas. So we feel very good, but a month is a long time in politics, as I can attest to, because he's only been in this race for 3 weeks, and It's been somewhat of a media storm. That said, I think Mr. Trump is looking forward to the opportunity of being on a debate stage to talk about his vision for America, which is putting people back to work. He'll be the only candidate on the stage who's actually created and employed tens of thousands of people, created tens of thousands of jobs and employed those people. He'll be the only person on the stage who has successfully built a gigantic business, who understands what it's like to make a payroll on a daily and weekly basis. He's not a career politician, obviously. He's never run for office before. And so all of these other candidates who will be on the stage will say, I created this job or I created that job. But the bottom line is government doesn't create jobs. The private sector does. So it's going to be important for the people to really understand the difference between a career elected official and then a businessman who has the opportunity to prove what it takes to actually be successful and not talk about it.
Now, Corey, there are some analysts, if you will, that are saying that coming on the debates is potentially going to be Trump's Waterloo, that he doesn't have the grasp or the knowledge of the issues, and that he's going to have the Rick Perry moment. I don't see that happening. What say you?
Here's what I think. I think you've got an individual who has had a exceptionally successful business career, who has understood what it takes to be successful through good economic times and bad. A person who knows from his gut what is right and what is wrong and is not afraid to say it. So when someone says, Mr. Trump, what is your position on illegal immigration? I don't think he's going to back away from that. If they say, what is your position to fix our economy? I don't think he's going to back away from that because he has real-world experience. He's the only candidate on the debate stage who does business on 5 different continents around the globe. He's got business interests around the globe. He's probably the only candidate on the debate stage who has actually met with most of the world leaders from an economic perspective to talk about those business opportunities. Other elected officials will say, well, I met with so-and-so, but they weren't driving jobs. They weren't trying to build something. They were just trying to pad their own resume. So he has the ability and the gravitas to not only do well on that debate stage, but hold his own against anybody in any environment.
I want to move to the international scene and have you make a few comments on some of the things going on and give us a feel of Mr. Trump's position. I want to start with Cuba and whether or not he believes there ought to be an embassy in Havana and an embassy in Washington.
Yeah, I think he's look, the world of Cuba has changed dramatically, and our relationships with them have changed dramatically. However, there's still some grave concerns about the influence of Fidel and his brother on the Cuban government and the regime that they continue to control down there. I think long-term there may be an opportunity to have the U.S. have better relations with Cuba, but this has been a dictatorship which has continuously held their people down in Cuba, and now for political purposes are trying to have a better relationship with the United States because their economy has been fluttering for a long time. So, I think you have to be very, very careful when you're dealing with the Castro family in Cuba and look at the history of what they have done to their people in the last 50 years.
Greece.
Look, an economy where the U.S. is heading if we don't do something about it. The Greek people were very clear in their vote this week, but don't kid yourself. Our economy, as much as we don't want to admit it, is going in the exact same direction. We continuously overspend, even though we bring in more money than we ever have. Our debt is at $18 trillion. It's climbing quickly. Once we hit $24 trillion, we actually end up like Greece. And, the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, which is why we continue to raise our debt limit, is supposed to be this magical thing, but what happens when there's no more money? So the U.S. economy has the opportunity to go the way Greece has if we don't control our spending.
What about sending additional troops in order to fight ISIS to the Middle East?
Well, I think he's been clear about this. You need to cut the heads off of ISIS, and I mean that in a figurative and not a literal term. But you need to cut the head off of that disaster over there as quickly as possible. I think Mr. Trump was clear that it was a mistake originally to go into Iraq because of knowing that Iraq and Iran have fought for hundreds of years between them, and now you've got ISIS running the oil fields, you've got ISIS building hotels over there. You need to do something very, very swiftly. That includes bombing, that includes potential boots on the ground, and what that would do is end the problem very, very quickly, hit them hard, and get out quickly.
Okay, final question. Virginia, the State Central Committee of the Republican Party, Corey Lewandowski of Virginia, voted for a primary on Saturday. So there's not going to be a state convention as we thought there would be. There's going to be a primary. Virginia will be part of Super Tuesday, March 1. I think if your candidate comes to the state and you campaign, I think you can carry Virginia. What are your plans?
Oh, we're absolutely going to campaign. We're going to campaign heavily in Virginia. As you know, Mr. Trump owns property in Virginia. He owns a winery in Virginia, the old Kluge estate, which he purchased. He owns a golf course in the northern part of Virginia, just outside of Dulles Airport. So he knows Virginia well. We're going to be there a lot. It is a great state where I think his message will resonate. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a swing state. It's a very important state. So you can count on seeing Mr. Trump in Virginia on a very regular basis, and we will take nothing for granted. We will make sure he is on the ballot there, and we will make sure he campaigns there fully.
Okay, so I assume that we can have him on our show in the next week or so.
Boy, I'd love to get him on the show. I can tell you from a traveling perspective, as you know, running for president is a full-time job, so He is traveling Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of this week. Other than that, he's around. And I'm just kind of half kidding, but we're going to make a West Coast swing this week. We've got stops in California, Nevada, Arizona, Louisiana, Arkansas, New Hampshire, and Iowa in the next 7 days, I think.
All right. We'll get him on as soon as we can. We want to thank Corey Lewandowski for being with us. Hey, Corey, if people want more info on the Trump for President campaign, where do they go?
Best thing to do is go right to the website, DonaldJTrump.com. That's DonaldJTrump.com. And let me say this. It's important to remember that Mr. Trump has said he's not going to be beholden to special interests and go out and raise money from a bunch of people and have to owe them favors. But the outpouring of unsolicited support to the website, both financially and through the kind words and letters that people have written, is so humbling. It's just amazing how many people in America want to stand up and have a safe and great country again, and that has resonated and shown up through the website. So DonaldJTrump.com is the best place to go. You can sign up. We've gotten 45,000 people who've signed up to the website in the last week alone saying, we want to hear more of your message. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything you're doing, John.
Thanks, man.